So why this tool is so important to me, I will give you just a little background before we dive in. I used to teach ninth grade English. That was my home. That was my love. It still is. I am now reading right now To Kill a Mockingbird for probably the 40th or 50th time. I just love everything about ninth grade curriculum. I love ninth graders. I love the emotions. I love the chaos. I love their developing minds. I love them as human beings. Like that kind of junior high, young high school age is just my favorite. And when I first started out teaching, of course, like a lot of us, I was very focused on, here's the curriculum and here's what they need to learn. And I would often think to myself, oh my gosh, I'm the only ninth grade teacher these kids will ever have for English. Oh, the pressure. I just wanted everything to be just right. And I wanted to tick off all the boxes, and I wanted to send them, on to 10th grade with all the tools they needed. I also had an 8th grade teacher in my building who was very strict, and she had the classroom right next to me, and she would often poke her head in with very judgy eyes and look at what I was doing. So I always had this pressure of like, I want to do it right. And I felt very nervous about what I was doing until somewhere in the second semester of teaching, where it just, I just fell in love with the kids, and we were just having, I don't know, how it is in teaching. Like, it's not about the curriculum, it's about the kids. And as I fell more and more in love with what I was doing, just this idea of thinking about thinking really took root in my classroom and for me as a teacher. So is it important that we know who the author of To Kill a Mockingbird is? Well, sure, that's great. But is it more important that we're thinking about how we learn? Is it more important that we're making connections between this book that is so old and what's happening in your life around social justice, around even funny things like, what is it like to have Wink Wink, a first year teacher in your classroom, and poor Scout and all her adventures? So we just really started moving away from, of course, we were covering the curriculum, but once we really got into that thinking about thinking concept together, that's where my classes really came to life. And that's just kind of how I would say, like, I opened up as a teacher, I relaxed, I started thinking about what we were learning together. So this topic of reflection, even though the past 2 weeks have been nuts and I haven't been able to reflect very much, really does form the foundation of who I am as an educator. And I hope today we can share lots of ideas together. Here's where we are today. There are a million directions we could go with this topic. So we could talk about, what reflection is. We can talk about why it matters. We could spend a long time, many sessions talking about reflective activities. So in today's session, I wanted to kind of do a sampler of all those things, with this central question of, what's in it for us? If you're gonna commit to a practice, you need to know why you should. And so our essential question for today is basically, why does this matter to us? Just as a human, as a teacher, for our students, and in our practice. So we'll be circling around that today together. And again, we're going to get to a point really soon where I hope you'll just blow up the chat and share ideas. And let's start here. So when you consider the word reflection, if you were, let's say you were a middle school student and your teacher said, we're going to do a reflection together, just fresh like that, without any context, what are some images that come to mind, and what are some actions that come to mind? If I say, we're going to do a reflection today, what do you think we're going to do? So put some answers in the chat, and also just speak them out. That would be awesome.
We've got talk and eyes closed, journaling, mirrors and journaling, breathing slow, brainstorming, quiet thinking, staring out the window, journaling, looking inward,
Mm.
going to a notebook, talking, calm and open and non-judgmental. So there are a lot of good things in the chat.
Ooh, love that. All right. So the mirrors one cracks me up. The literal, yes, reflection, a lake, a mirror, a car window. Um, so the first time that I started using this word, I actually had a parent get really angry with me. She was a beautiful parent, but her child had come home and said, we're doing reflection in English class. And she wrote me a note and said something like, I don't want any of that new age stuff going on in my kids' class. I was like, oh, first mistake. Explain the term, explain what you mean. Because if you're not familiar with the reflective practice, it can sound a little woohoo, right? Like, what are we gonna do? And reflection is actually it's scientific. There's no new age to it. It's not mystic. It's not even. I mean, you can meditate to reflect if that's your personal practice, but you don't have to, treat it like that. So the first step when we talk about reflection is to define it, and that's helpful with your students too. So the definition I most use is really the definition for metacognition. I often just say we're going to think about thinking. We're going to think about what we're doing. It's broader than that, but that tends to really define it for kids and kind of get them in the right mindset. We're not going down a imaginative path all the time, although certainly that's a part of brainstorming. But what we're really doing is we're analyzing our thinking processes. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. But I love your examples too. All right, Kolb's learning styles. This is gosh, this has been around, I think, since the 80s. Has anyone heard of David Kolb? Nodding. Good. Okay, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on this. You can look this guy up. He's all over. He has put into a nice pattern what he hopes for learners. So this experiential learning cycle that you're seeing here is really a pattern that ideally, in David's opinion, and I agree, if as learners we were to follow this cycle often and bring it to completion, we would find ourselves growing and pursuing and reaching challenges. So the first stage is the concrete experience. And that's a given. Like we're going to have these experiences in life. They're going to happen. In our context today, we're talking about experiences in education, but in life, no matter what we're doing, we can use this experience to learn. We always tell our kids, we want you to be lifelong learners. We want you to love learning. We want you to be curious. This is the cycle that brings that to fruition. So you have a concrete experience. It is what it is. It may be great, it may be not great, but in the concrete experience, there's really not a whole lot you can do about it. The lesson went the way it went. The conversation with the student happened for good or for bad. The challenging conversation with another colleague happened. The delightful conversation with a parent happened. This thing happened. And then the next step that we'll be focusing on today is, what do I think about that? I'm thinking about the facts. What did happen? How did I feel about it? What did I notice? So you start reflecting, and then from there you build into, this is where we get to push a little. We build into the what ifs. So it's abstract now, but what if I had said this? What if we had done this differently? What if we had been in this setting? What if I had tried this other thing? And you start wrestling with, here's what happened, but what if? what went well and what might I want to repeat, what didn't go so well and what might I have done with it, until finally we get into the experimentation portion where you actually try. So based on what you learned from the experience, you're going to try something new. You're going to repeat some things, you're going to try some other things. So this is that circle. And of course, when you try something new, that creates another concrete experience, and then the cycle kicks off again. So for David Kolb, you're always in this circle of, I did something, now what am I going to learn from it? Now what am I going to do? And you just stay in that cycle. If you get stuck in any of these portions, you get frustrated and thwarted. So when you have the cycle in your head, it's always nice, like these little 4 steps. Like sometimes I'll say to myself, oh my goodness, I am spinning. So like the other day I had a meeting with our team and I was all out of whack. Like it had been a busy day. There were things happening in my ear right up until the moment the Zoom went on. And then I was supposed to deliver this content and it didn't go great, you know? So I spent time after that kind of spinning like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. Oh, I forgot to say this. I can't, you know, I was just really spinning. And if you stick in the reflective content for too long, you can actually do yourself more harm than good. So you have to move out of the reflection into, okay, now what? Now what am I going to do? And sometimes that comes through your own ability. Other times, in this case, I talked to, I think it was Brian and Catherine, and I said, oh my gosh, what happened there? And they were able to say, oh no, you know, this went well, this we could have done a little bit differently. But sometimes it takes a colleague to help you move into a different point. So if you ever find yourself spinning, that's okay, that happens. But it is important to find a way out onto the abstract so that then you can start doing some other things. All right, so this process takes a while, right? So if we're gonna go around the circle and we're always gonna be learning, it does take some time. So let's talk for a minute, your opinion, what keeps you from reflecting on a concrete experience and trying something new? So what are some of the barriers we have to reflection? And you can chat, or please just say it out loud if you want.
Maybe you don't want to take the time.
Yeah. Maybe you don't want to take the time. Maybe you don't have the time, right? Or feel like you don't have the time.
Confidence was another one that came up in the chat. Uncertainty. Getting in your own head, convincing yourself it's not going to be helpful. Facing what went wrong. Other concrete experiences come in and don't allow the moment of reflection.
That's interesting. Let me get back over there. I might be in a stage, but another stage crowds it out. That's fascinating.
I was gonna say that sometimes your emotional reaction, I suppose, you know, sometimes just somebody put something like this in the chat, you know, difficulties in facing what really went wrong, you know. So
yeah,
sometimes, you know, they will affect you emotionally sometimes.
yes, absolutely.
Thinking about classrooms, sometimes the teacher has a limited time and also students. So there is only time to go through something, but not to reflect about what we've learned or what we've done. So maybe the student goes home with that thought, but there is no time to do it in class or at school.
Right. Yeah. When I think about reflection, those two things that you guys just said are the two things that really get me. One is just the time. If it's hard for myself, of course it's hard in a busy classroom. And two, I am an emotional person. So when I start reflecting on something, I can take a little happy trip by myself that may or may not be helpful. So I think that's why today we'll talk about like the power of moving through the process. So when we're reflecting, we're not just getting stuck in that. There really is a purpose, and we'll talk about that in a second. Thank you guys.
Another
Yeah.
Another comment on in the chat. Also in the classroom, reflection can be scary if
Mhm.
students don't come up with things or it takes a different turn, etc.
Yeah. All the work that we do on building classroom community so that if something tough happens, we can navigate it is so important. So of course, this type of work also requires that foundational work of setting norms in your classroom of respect, building relationships with your kids, all that good stuff. So as we talk through some strategies, I would like for you to get a situation in your mind so that as we give examples and we're thinking through how to do this, you can use a real life example. So for me, I'm going to use the example of this presentation right here and pretend that I'm reflecting on it as I talk. But for you, go ahead and pick something that is pretty fresh in your mind that would benefit you to reflect on. And I put some prompts up on the screen to help. So just get a little something in your mind to anchor us. So to move us through the circle, to get us from the concrete experience to the reflection, through the reflection into planning, and then to trying something new, we have 3 guiding questions that can help us. So the first question is what? The second question is so what? And the third question is now what? And so what is not intended to be like sassy, like so what? Although that could be helpful too if you're upset about something. Well, so what? But these are good guiding questions that'll get us right through that process and help us always be looking forward, so that we can learn and grow just as we want our students to do. All right, so thinking about your situation that you just chose, it's a lesson, it's a conversation, maybe it's something great that happened, maybe it's something challenging that happened. So thinking about that, here are some questions you can ask yourself to help you analyze the concrete experience. So the first obvious question is what happened? And in this stage, I would just encourage you to be very, very objective. Don't get caught up in how you feel about it. Just be objective. What issue is being addressed? What stands out to you is a good one. Like what happened in this context that really sticks in your mind because it's sticking there for a reason. Even the feeling, how did you feel about that? That is just an objective question. I felt nervous. I felt upset. I felt happy. I felt excited. Just label your feeling about it. So if I were reflecting on this presentation today, I could say very, very objective things. I see people smiling. The chat is very active. Some people are saying things out loud. How do I feel about that? I love that. Just go ahead and list some things, how the what of it. And that gives us a solid place to land as we reflect. And then we get to move on to the so what. So this part is where we're really analyzing what that concrete experience meant to us. Okay, and these are questions you can use with your kids too. And it can be within the lesson context. It's also great for conflict resolution. So if you have some kiddos in a tough spot and they're having trouble working out some conflicts, these are great questions to kind of get them to analyze. So get them out of the emotion of it into a more thinking. So I love the second question. Did you hear, smell, feel anything that surprised you? So sometimes when we're analyzing, we really, like Erica said, you can get caught up in your head. let's bring it out to the senses. Let's think about like what all was going on. What were your strongest thoughts? Why do you think that is? What happened that was different from what you expected? That's always a great one. I had a really difficult conversation with a parent the other day, and I really expected it not to go so well. That's how I walked into it. Like, this is going to be hard, and I don't know if we're going to be able to get on the same page about that. And by the end of the meeting, we were laughing together, and he wrote a note after and said, "I just really appreciate you listening to me." So that experience was way different than what I expected in a good way, which I really appreciated. So what kind of shook you up? What did you notice? And how did you respond is so important, because one of the greatest things that we can do in our teaching practice is just measure our responses. Things are going to happen all around us all the time. And it's really our response that makes the difference, even if we can't always control the outer factors. So that moves us from that second stage of analysis into, now we're going to move into the third stage, which is now what? So you've had this experience, you've thought through it, you've noticed things. What are you going to do next? Sometimes we find that we're going to do the same thing again because that went great. And that's always nice. Sometimes we find, no, not so much. I'm going to shake some things up. Going back to my earlier example about going into the meeting very rushed. You know, if I had to do that over again, I would have taken 5 minutes before that meeting to go to a quiet place and catch my breath. That wouldn't have been that hard to do. Even little tweaks like that. And I really, really love on this list, as you're reading through the fourth bullet from the end, what information can you share with your peers or community? Because I think that really draws it out into us as a community of educators, and we can learn so much from each other, which we're going to do in just a minute. Okay, we're going to do an experiment together. This is going to be fun. There's a little bit of a surprise at the end, and I'm eager to see what your reaction is. Okay, in this experiment, I have made a top 10 list of why we should take time for reflection. So we're kind of being academic here. We're thinking about the benefits and the why rather than the strategy right now, but we'll get to that. But just before we get to that, I've made a top 10 list of the top 10 reasons we should take time to reflect. And on that top 10 list, there are things about just us as educators. There are things about why it helps our students. And there are things about why it kind of helps in our profession. So I would like for you to take 3 minutes, and in the chat, just freewheeling, don't think too hard. I want you to list everything you can think of that would be a benefit to taking time to reflect. And then we're going to see how it matches up with my list. So hopefully you're going to think of some things that aren't on my list, but there's a little surprise at the end I want to think about. So just blow up the chat. Why should we do this? Why should we pause and work through a situation? A lesson plan, a conversation, whatever it is.
There's a few, so bear with me. Reduce amount of mistake to make sure you express what you want correctly. To get closer to the truth. Stress reliever, learn authentically, solve problems, learning from experiences, continually improve, to know yourself better, to know others better. Slowing down can make you more body aware, which can be healthier for our staff. Get to know myself better in the classroom, get to know better the students and learn from mistakes, finding different points of view, gain confidence, identify positive and negative experiences, make better decisions.
Nice. I've already caught 2 that I didn't think of. I'm excited. All right.
Make knowledge more visible, self-awareness.
Mm, mm. Okay, and before I do the big reveal, put in the chat on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being never and 10 being just about every day, how often do you use a reflective practice in your own life or in your profession? Where are we? See, I can't put 10 down this month. I'm really impressed. Keep going, be honest. I'll tell you where I am for real this month. I'm here. That's it. It's bad. So you be honest too, and the rest of you, wow.
I feel like I'm right there with you, Stephanie. I was just thinking about that. I don't know that I've stopped. When you said that at the beginning, it really kind of hit. I don't think I've stopped either this month.
Yeah, I'm like talking
But-
myself back into it.
Our
Yeah.
10 didn't mean we are successful. It's just because we keep on thinking and reflecting.
Well, I love Sherry. That's because we need to get you, Sherry, past the reflective stage into the action stage. If that's the way you're feeling. But I feel like you are very active. I feel like you are always building on what you're thinking about. I love this. And we're going to talk about that perfection in just a second, Anna. That's an important point, and we're going to swing back to that. Okay, keep chatting if you have them. Help me. Yep, we're going to get to it, Sherry. Help me. I'm going to go through these quickly. Let's look at each one. It's a countdown from 10 to 1. We're going to end up with the top reason we should be reflective. Help me see what we agreed with and what was different. All right, here we go. Number 10, it enhances job satisfaction. A reflective practice helps us find greater meaning in our work. Did we get that in the chat?
Yes,
Okay.
somewhat. Yes.
How about encourage innovation? It encourages us to experiment with new strategies.
Yes.
Okay, 2 for 2 so far. Oops, what is happening? Improve teacher-student relationships. We understand them better. We adjust to meet their needs. Good. Enhance student engagement by encouraging them, they grow. I did kind of lead the question to think more about us, but
Yeah. Kind of.
okay. So have we come across anything on my list that isn't already familiar to us? These are not shocking yet. Okay, here we go. I'm struggling with my clicker. Okay, foster a culture of learning and promote critical thinking. Did anybody in theirs talk about, I start to question my own assumptions, my own biases?
A little bit. It was identify positive and negative experiences,
Okay,
opportunity to improve future practices. So I would think that would fit
okay.
into that.
So I'm challenging myself to get outside of my own mind and think of things in a new perspective. Okay.
Yep.
Professional growth and increased self-awareness.
Yep.
Somebody said in there, I loved this. I hadn't thought of this, but like when you take time to reflect, it calms your body down. And we know that our body and our mind are connected. So if you can send a signal to your body to just calm down for a minute, it pairs with what you're doing and it creates some sense of calm and a little bit of control instead of that frenzied. So I love that connection between like the physical and the mental. I thought that was really smart. Okay, we're ready for 2 and 1. 2 is it improves student learning. And 1, it enhances teaching effectiveness. All right. Take a guess. Where do you think I got this list? That's true, Sherry. Where did this list come from? If you know the way I write, there aren't my words exactly. Where do you think this list came from? Nobody's guessing.
Chatbot.
Bert, Bert, yes, that is what I did. I made my own list first. I typed into ChatGPT, I said, give me 10 reasons teachers should reflect on their practice. This is it. And I think we all, Erica, would that I had gotten it from the master. No, this is ChatGPT. And so just for a fun activity to show you how in this new thing, it's not exactly new, but this thing that is happening with our kids, let's think about the fact that a group of educators just did a whole presentation on why we should reflect, and Chatbot pretty much summed up all of our thoughts, right? I mean, we didn't really have anything on our list that Chatbot didn't catch, although there were a few things to note, which we'll talk about. So let's do a little reflecting. I'm going to come back to this slide. All right. Use this, pretend we were in a classroom and you just did this to your students. You told them something was original and then you revealed not so much. All right, this is called the shape reflection. It goes by lots of names. I just call it the shape reflection. What are 3 important points I will take with me about this experience? You don't have to type them all, but if you could just type a takeaway. I just did a lesson. We thought about benefits. Well, what do you know? Chatbot thought pretty much the same thing I thought. What am I going to take away from that? Other than that, Stephanie is a big fat cheater. So keep chatting those. The next stage is to think, what did I agree with in that? What ideas are squared away in my mind? That's a little awkward, but it has to fit with the shape. So what ideas did I square away in my mind? I agreed with this. I thought similarly. I didn't get surprised. And just a note on the square, if you're doing this activity and it's more of a personal opinion, like say you're doing argumentative essays or you're doing debate, the square reflection can also say what squared with my beliefs. So like what rings true to me. So you can make it logical or you can make it personal emotion. It works either way. Chatbots challenge us to reflect. Yes, they do. And then last, what questions are circling in my mind? So one question I have is, if I were going to use Chatbot on my next assignment, let's pretend I'm a student. Yep, there it is, Erica. Like, didn't that give me a nice starting point? Like if I'm wrestling with an issue and I've already thought about it and I've researched it, but I want to summarize it or I want to put it in a nice package. What could I do? Like, what would I do next with that list? I wouldn't just share it as my own, right? How do I embrace reflection to calm myself and lower anxiety? What does the future hold for teachers? How can we connect to our kiddos? So this reflection activity is one of my favorites. It's quick. You can do it in a think, pair, share. You can draw it out to be longer. The idea here is that you're getting kids to kind of do, it's kind of parallel to the what, so what, and now what. So what did you learn? Absolutely. What you going to take away from this? What ideas are squared away in my mind? That's a question that kind of asks you to assimilate information. Like, I know this for sure. I I've got this, but then the now what? What other questions do I have? So you can see how you're kind of getting kids out of, you know, I did the writing workshop that Miss Klingon asked me to. But then what? Why does that matter? Yes, Erica, yes, like I focused a lot on like how to do better, but absolutely reflection tells us what we're doing well, which is kind of that square too, like this, I got this part. I'm gonna keep doing this. Okay, let me get us back here. Sherry and all, my word, all my fellow perfectionists out there. I feel you. This is your slide, okay? So we just interviewed a woman who is a preschool director. She's been a director for decades. She is a master teacher. She is wonderful with children, and she is one of the best people I've ever seen who just pours into her team and mentors younger teachers. And she said something in the interview that just, I know it and I believe it, but it was the way she said it. She said, any difficult situation I go into, whether it's, 3-year-olds misbehaving or that challenging discussion with a family or whatever, our days are filled with these moments of, oh, that's gonna be hard. She always goes into it with this question in mind: what am I going to learn from this? And that takes away the pressure to always get it right. That lets us be human. That lets us be curious. So we don't always have to be the one with the right answer. Sometimes we're walking into something and we're going to learn together. So that is her take on everything she does. Like, that's the primary question she keeps in her mind throughout the whole day. What will I learn from this? And that to me is moving through the reflection stages that we talked about. This thing happened. I have thoughts and feelings about it. I'm not going to stay there. I'm going to think, well, now what? And that's the growth. So reflection really does equal growth mindset. And sometime I'd like to have a follow-up time together where we actually talk about the how, the strategies that we can use with ourselves and our kids, and our families and our schools. But for now, I just have 2 links that I use a lot. I go to these links often. One is for me, how to make reflection a habit. I need to revisit that one. And the second one is just a bunch of fun, different kinds of reflective activities you can use in professional development groups and with your kids. And one of the things I like about that second link is it's not just words and writing. It's not just speaking and writing. It's there's suggestions for how to use sketching, art, photography, really giving kids the chance to communicate in lots of different ways and not just, English teacher here. I could talk all day, but that's not necessarily how they communicate. So as we close today, let's go back to this slide and just out loud, preferably so that you can explain it to us, or in the chat if it's something you can articulate in typing. What are some of your favorite reflective things to do, either for yourself or with students or teachers in a group? What are some reflective strategies that you would like to share with us that we could walk away with today? And I'm thinking in terms of like things you can pull out of your hat, like an exit slip that asks a question, or the 3-2-1 strategy, 3 questions I have, or 3 things I learned, 2 questions I have, those kind of things. If you have a tried and true reflective strategy, share it with us so that we can put it in our toolbox.
In the chat, yeah, so misconception checks and concept maps and exit cards, the things you were just talking about.
Erica, can you tell us what a misconception check is?
Well, in science, there's often things that students think they know, but they really don't. And they're common. So like a lot of kids think heavier things fall faster. And so I usually use a misconception check at the beginning of a lesson, where I might give, well, my favorite is, I call it snowball. I ask the students to number their paper, and then I give them statements that are true, false. And they don't write their name on their paper, but they just say if they think it's true or false. So I could say, true or false, heavier things fall faster. And then they say what they think, but they don't put their name on their paper. And then we wad it up. And of course, we had a little safety talk before about don't throw it hard, don't put it in anybody's backpack. We're going to have a snowball fight. And so then we would throw our papers around the room, collect one. So hopefully you have one that is somebody else's. But even if it's your own, you can pretend it's somebody else's because your name's not on it. And then we would just go through and we'd say, how many people said true, they think heavier things fall faster? And then I would count the students who had a paper that said true, and we'd make tally marks on the board. And at the beginning, we keep the tally marks on the board at the beginning of the lesson. And then at the end, I can ask them, so how many of these true, false would you change now that we've talked about the science?
Nice.
And it's always got a lot of student interaction and enthusiasm. I've never had a student not enjoy that. And then it also gives them a little question of, ooh, I wonder, where was I wrong? You can even go for the final answer at the very end and not even talk about it at the beginning.
Yeah. And it takes the risk out of it. Like, instead of just saying like thumbs up if this is true or thumbs down if it's false, they're safe to take a risk and say what they really think. I love that. Snowball fight. Nice. And I like that if that's a pattern you use with students, they'll start to anticipate what you're going to ask. And then that creates that habit, right? And that I know this, I know how to do this. That's lovely. Nice. Oh, see, I love a good acronym. Yes. TAG. Tell something good. Ask a question. Give a suggestion. Okay. Well, this was lovely. Thank you all. Just truly, the days are busy, and that you took the time to come today and to be together. That means a lot. And it's just so lovely to see your faces and hear your voices and see your chats. Thank you all. I hope you guys have a great day heading into the weekend, and happy reflecting.